So for the next hour and a half, we got a couple things going on. First, Sarah Curran, who, if you don't know Sarah Curran yet, you need to get to know Sarah Curran, who is, applause, yes. Thank you, Kate. All right, so first, Sarah is going to be giving an overview of the process, a little more detail than what your co-chairs, the Climate Council co-chairs did earlier. And then her colleague, Molly, is going to be providing a little bit more detail about the engagement that happens. We're going to be using that little QR code as well in the middle of this, so I'll let you know when it's time to do that. But first things first, why don't I turn it over to Sarah Curran and GoPIF to walk us through a little bit more detail of what the process is and what to expect in the next months.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you. So Molly and I, as David said, are going to talk just a little bit about the process to update the Climate Action Plan. This is the timeline that you saw this morning. The update is due to the legislature and the governor on December 1st, 2024. So that is a statutory deadline. From now until June, the working groups will be working to develop and analyze and make recommendations to the council for consideration to both reduce our emissions and make our state more resilient to the impacts of climate change. So a lot of work happening, probably monthly meetings for the working groups from now until June, as they kind of look back at what the plan said, look at what the equity subcommittee recommended, look at where we've made progress and where there are gaps and areas where we need to do more, and then develop recommendations to bring to the Climate Council in June. The STS, as you heard this morning, the Scientific and Technical Subcommittee, is already hard at work developing the update to the assessment of climate impacts on Maine. And so we'll do a presentation later this year about their findings as well. And so that will also help the working groups as you're working to develop those recommendations. And then next fall, the Climate Council will reconvene to consider and prioritize and integrate all of those recommendations from the working group. So that's the kind of general flow. It'll be a lot of work by the Scientific and Technical Subcommittee right now. The working groups and their equity subcommittee members will be meeting from now until June, and then it'll all come together next fall to be packaged and delivered by December 1st, 2024. Just a quick reminder about the structure of the Climate Council. It includes 2 subcommittees and 6 working groups. So the Scientific and Technical Subcommittee is responsible for helping us all understand the climate impacts on Maine. The Equity Subcommittee supports the equitable implementation of the state's climate action plan, so looking to ensure that the benefits of climate action reach across Maine to diverse populations, especially our most vulnerable. And then the working groups are arranged sort of sector-specific. So with experts, all of you here in this room and also joining us from Zoom, who bring expertise and experience specific to that area to help that working group develop recommendations in their area of focus. So thank you all for your heavy work and lifting that you're going to be doing in the months ahead. It is a pretty intensive process, but it allows, we had more than 230 people participate in the working groups and subcommittees last time around. We have a lot of really diverse perspectives and experiences on the working groups and the subcommittees and the Climate Council, and it really results in a really great plan that we can all be proud of and get behind. So thank you all for the work that you're going to do to move this forward. I also want to acknowledge some of the federal funding that's going to help us do this work in the coming months. As Hannah was mentioning, there's a lot of federal funding for climate and energy action, for infrastructure. There is one specific grant opportunity through the EPA that is for climate planning. And so the state received a $3 million grant from EPA that we're going to use to help us do some additional analysis that will help the working groups and the council in your decision making. So we're doing some sector-specific analyses. Looking at buildings, medium and heavy duty vehicles, fleets, land use, waste. So we'll be doing those analyses. We've already released a couple of the RFPs and more will be coming. So those will be available to help support your work. We'll also do the emissions modeling again, the way, for those of you who were here when we did this plan before, we had an emissions consultant who helped us understand what the different impacts of the various strategies under consideration were. So we'll have a consultant who can help us with the emissions and also the co-benefits, understanding the different co-benefits of different strategies. So we'll have the EPA funding is going to help us do more analysis than we were able to do last time. It's also going to help us do a lot more outreach and engagement. So we have a lot of people who are participating in the process, and we want to reach a lot more. And so one of the things the federal funding is going to help us do is reach more people as part of this process and get their voices included as part of the Climate Action Plan update. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Molly, who's going to talk more about outreach and engagement.
Okay, so we're going to do that little thing with the QR code again. And so my colleague Cameron will drop a link in the chat for those of you who are watching on the webinar. Grab your phones, folks. Grab your phones and that little tent thing in front of you. And Cameron, if you can advance to that question here that we see here. Molly's going to talk about engagement, but we want to get some input from you. And there's a multiple choice question here. Shout out if it's not working for you. But it's a multiple choice question, and you're allowed to pick up to 3. So you don't have to pick your favorite, pick your top 3. And it's basically asking you, what works? What works when it comes to engaging people on these issues? All right, so great, we're getting some responses in. I'll share in just a moment. Grab your phones if you haven't already. Use that same QR code. What works? I've never felt so good looking at a room. Oh no, try again. I see a lot of people on it, so something must be going on. Try a refresh. Yeah, I think somehow we got your IP address and canceled that out. All right, I see people very actively look at their phones. I think that's good. I think that's good. Is it? Could you try a refresh? Are other people having close problems? No, it's good. Try refreshing that. Good. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and throw some results up, even as some of you are finishing. Let's look at the ones from the in-the-room results first. So Daniel, if you can do that. Okay. Great. Okay, so, all right, so there's some that are of similar, although interestingly, attending these meetings and working group meetings is rising to the top. That's fantastic. Okay. And then you can see some of the other pieces around social media, email outreach. You know, I don't know where those mics are right now, but Brian, do you want to give me a hand? I'm interested before I show from outside, I'm interested in the room. You know, for those of you who said my preferred strategy isn't on this list, I'd be just curious to hear what that preferred strategy is. So if you're someone here in the room that clicked that box of my preferred strategy isn't on the list, Brian here has a microphone with your name on it, right here in the front, right here in the front. Let's hear what that is. Oh, for the webinar. But thank you.
For an older adult who's not on social media, who's not able to access technology to attend these meetings, but I think something in my own town would make a big difference. Right. Something where I go to, my local library, my local town hall would make a big difference.
Thank you. Yeah, I see a hand in the back right there.
My preferred strategy is solving problems that are climate related but may not sort of just automatically fall under the climate rubric for everyone.
Nice. Right. You don't have to brand this climate. Yeah. Over here, and we got one in the back and then in the front. We'll start in the back. Oh, could someone get that mic going? I don't think you turned it off. I think. Maybe Brian could do backup on the mic. Thanks. Sorry, this is just for the webinar folks so they can hear what's being said.
Yeah, I find your website really helpful, and also the hard copy reports.
Super. Website and the hard copy. Brian, could you bring that up here to the gentleman in the blue jacket?
Thank you. I would suggest making sure to reach out to the organizations that are providing pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship training on some of the careers that are needed in our green energy workforce. So people like the electricians and laborers and the plumbers and pipe fitters for heat pumps and the operating engineer. We've been doing that type of training for quite some time, and it's a really good pipeline into young people and mid-career adults who are trying to learn something new.
Super. Thanks, folks. And feel free to introduce yourselves when you speak, because I know it's very relevant, your role in saying that. So, okay. So unless I see another hand right now, what we might do is switch over to the results, Daniel, from the other folks. We'll just see what the folks online, those who stuck with us after lunch, what they had to say. Here we go. Okay. So very similar with a stronger emphasis on email. Okay. Great. Okay. So with that, let's talk about engagement, and let's talk about what's being planned. And then if we want to have a quick conversation amongst all of us about that to supplement what Molly's about to tell us, let's do that. But Molly, come on up. If you could introduce yourself and talk a little bit what you want to do.
Yes. Thank you. Hello. My name is Molly Siegel. I'm the coordinator for the Maine Climate Council. So you will and you have received a lot of emails from me, and you will continue to do so. It's really helpful for us to see your responses here as we start to craft and continue to iterate what this process looks like in order to hear from a wide array of perspectives as we help the council to update the next climate action plan. And I'm going to talk about a couple of the things that we have already planned, and of course this process will evolve as we hear from you in processes like these. So first of all, I want to mention the working groups and their representation. Each working group represents a wide array of voices and perspectives on each of the sector-specific topics that those working groups will focus on. And so these working groups are an important way that, that the Climate Council will hear from diverse communities, organizations, and businesses across Maine that are impacted by climate change and by our response to climate change. The working groups, in addition to the membership of those groups, will also each meet with stakeholders in their area of focus. So in addition to just the folks in that group, they will be reaching out beyond the membership to make sure that they're reaching a number of other voices who are impacted by their issue area. Of course, we know that we can't just rely on the members of the working groups in the Maine Climate Council to bring all of the perspectives that will be needed. So we recognize that it takes a little bit of extra effort on our part to make sure that we hear from populations that don't always tend to be represented in these types of processes and maybe face greater barriers to participation. So we recognize that it takes work for us to hear from disadvantaged, underserved communities. We call them priority populations, folks who are most vulnerable to climate change and face greater barriers to responding and to taking climate action in their own communities. And so we recognize that we will be having to make an effort to provide really meaningful opportunities for those individuals and communities to have their voices heard in the process. So in order to do that, our office, GoPIF, is currently seeking an outreach and engagement coordinator through a request for proposals that we have right now. It's currently available on maine.gov at our Division of Procurement Services. So we'll be looking for an organization or a coalition of organizations to put in a proposal in order to help us improve and expand our capacity to do this work during the updating of the Climate Action Plan. They will be helping us to shape exactly what that looks like on the ground within communities. We don't know exactly what it will look like yet because we need that expert advice and services that coordinator will provide. So with that in mind, that's what we are using some of that additional climate funding from the EPA grant for. In tandem with that RFP, we're also developing a publicly available list of partner organizations that will assist to really do the on-the-ground work to help us reach and hear from priority populations. So those are organizations that might be able to do something like convene individuals to come to a focus group in their hometown or their community, or to help us disseminate information to folks using the channels that are most familiar and most useful to them. I wanted to give another mention to the importance of engaging young people in the climate action process. We've heard a ton about that today. Continues to be important. We have a new youth climate engagement fellow, Abigail, who's doing a lot of really great work to support young people to be involved in the process and to build relationships with other organizations and coalitions throughout the state that are already helping youth to have their voices heard. And then finally, I just hope that you will continue to follow the Maine Climate Council. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We have a newsletter that goes out that will be the best way for you to stay updated on who's meeting when, which working groups are meeting, important events and milestones throughout the climate action process, and future ways for you to stay involved and engaged. And you can find most of that on our website, maine.gov/future/climate/council. Thanks so much.
So before we switch gears and hear from the working group co-chairs, I just want to pause because I feel like the engagement piece of this will be so mission critical that if there is advice, if there are thoughts that you all here in this room have for Molly, Sarah, and the team, now's a really good time to do it. We don't have a lot of time, but I do want to just pause and let that happen because my sense is this engagement will be critical for this to work well. Last time when we did this 4 years ago, we had big ideas about engagement. COVID hit in the middle. We scrambled, we made it work. We have now 3-4 years of learning about how to do this. And knock on wood, we can do some in-person things too this time, right? Okay, any quick advice for Molly, Sarah, or comments you have right now? I see a hand right there, back there, and Brian can grab. And thanks for using the mic. We do that so everybody online can hear too.
Hi, I'm Sally Stockwell with Maine Audubon. I know many towns have conservation commissions and or sustainability committees. It would be great if GOPIF could get the word out to all of those committees, both to keep them informed and to make sure that they have an opportunity to provide input and perhaps sign up for some of these great grants you have.
Thanks. By the way, my team's taking notes today on this, so you'll see in a meeting summary all these ideas that are coming up. So you don't see me actually on a flip chart right now, but it's happening behind the scenes. Other thoughts for over here? Yep. Right behind you, Mike.
Thank you. Judy East, DACF. We've heard that going to people's meetings rather than expecting them to come to your meetings is effective. And I think that is translatable to email networks. So you engage networks of networks and have the trusted partner be the person who reaches out to theirs. So I'm thinking of all of the regional planning commissions, all of the regional coordinators, and MMA in particular.
Thanks, Judy. That's great. Over here, yeah.
Hi again, Tora Johnson, currently with UMaine at Machias. I have a couple of suggestions. One is I think it would be really great for some more formal integration between the working groups and the equity committee. I think outreach and really thinking productively together might be really productive. And the other thing is that reaching out to the social scientists on the Science and Technical Subcommittee could be a really useful thing. There's a lot we know, about how Mainers think and behave and operate and engage with climate and how they don't. And I think pulling that understanding and using those folks to draw on the body of knowledge that we've spent lots of time over the last several years gathering could be really helpful and informative.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Up at the front here, yeah.
Noel Bonham, hello again. There are 86 age-friendly communities across the state, from Kittery, Maine to Fort Kent, Maine, and they are very active leaders in those communities that are influencers. And I think it'd be great to kind of actually do something formal with those leaders, maybe do something similar with just the Age-Friendly Community Network, because those people talk to their neighbors, to people in their community. That'll have a much quicker, a more sustainable impact, I think, of engagement.
Thank you. Yeah. Up here.
Hi, I'm Melissa Law from Bumbleroot Organic Farm. I actually just have a question, which is, what is the difference between this website that's listed here and the Maine Won't Wait website?
Here.
All right, is that working? Yeah. Okay, thanks for the question, Melissa. Yes, so we do have two websites, and without going into too much detail, I think moving forward, for those who are interested in following the work of the Climate Council and the process that is used to update the Climate Action Plan from its current iteration to its next iteration, the Maine.gov, the website that's on the screen now, is the one to follow. This is really more geared towards the process of the council and finding public meeting notices and minutes from each of the working group meetings and meeting materials. And I think that other website, the Maine Won't Wait, comes into play when we publish the Climate Action Plan. So when the plan gets updated, we wanted a way to reach a wider audience of people with more of a user-friendly website that's focused on the actions that people can take within the Climate Action Plan. So I hope that's a somewhat helpful answer.
Super. Thanks. All right. Anything else before we transition to hear from the co-chairs? Okay. Super. Well, thank you all. And you know that Molly and Sarah are the right people to be reaching out to if you have ideas about specific things to do. They're the right ones to reach out to. Yeah? And if you know people who would be wonderful to apply for this RFP, to be connecting with community-based organizations, go talk to them and get them to apply. This is going to be a really important role for this process. Okay, super, thanks. How about let's just keep doing the applause. Okay, so now we have 6 working groups and 6 groups of co-chairs, and we're going to spend the next hour or so hearing from them, right? So, co-chairs, I'll ask for your help in being powerful and concise. And everyone else, it's tough after lunch to do this, but I'm really interested to hear what they're going to say, right? And I think we all should be. Now, I've got a little mechanism here. We're not going to do any more of this sort of real-time polling and showing results and things like that. However, that little QR code that you have, or if you're online, that same link, at the end of each of these co-chair presentations, we're going to take 60 seconds and we're going to sit in silence. And you're on your phone or on your computer if you're watching the web stream. There's going to be a question that says, what's something that this working group absolutely can't forget to deal with when they go about this work? And we're just going to sit, and you can type in your phone real quick. There's also a piece of paper on most of these tables. If you're tired of doing this on your phone, you can just write it down too. But we're going to take those 60 seconds in silence, just do that, then phones down, next presentation, okay? It's a way that we don't lose something in the moment that we have, and we'll we'll let that. We're not going to look at it in real time. We're just going to capture it now, and we'll share it back to the co-chairs and all of you who are interested. Okay? All right, so let's dive into it. The first is transportation, the Transportation Working Group. We have Joyce Taylor, who you've seen, the video star on the screen, right? And we also have Jeff Crawford, who's stepping up to be co-chair this time around. Thank you, Jeff, for that. And Joyce is with the Maine Department of Transportation. You saw her title up. Jeff Crawford is with Maine DEP. And I'll get your title wrong, so I'll let you do that. But it's Bureau Air Quality, some things. But I will let the two of you sort out how you want to do your presentations. You can come up here and do it, or you can sit. Ours, yours. So, Joyce, Jeff, the stage is yours.
Good afternoon. Yes, my name is Jeff Crawford, and I am the director of the Bureau of Air Quality at Maine DEP. So, thank you, David. We're here this afternoon to just provide a brief overview of some of the activities that have transpired in the last 4 years. And there's been a lot of successes, still a lot of work to be done. First of all, if I can figure out how to make this work.
Big green button in the middle.
Green button in the middle. There we go. Try that again.
The other green.
Oh, the big. There's two green buttons. I don't follow directions too well, so it's the big green button. I guess first success story really is our efforts and the efforts of some of our partners out there in accelerating the deployment of electric vehicle charging stations in ports. Back in 2020, we had about 220 charging stations, and so far this year, we're up to 440 stations. That's a real success. 3, 4, 5 years ago, there were a lot of concerns with electric vehicles. Did we have the range to go from southern Maine to northern Maine? Could we go from Portland to Freeport and make it home again? Remembering most folks are planning on charging at home at night, but still, if we're going to take a long trip, 40, 50 miles, will the car make it? Will there be charging for it? A lot of those questions have been solved. Yes, the vehicles will make it. I think, as most people are aware, most electric vehicles out there are certainly capable of several hundred miles on a charge. Some a little less, some a little more. And if you have a plug-in hybrid vehicles, those can range from 30, 40 miles on electric only to 70 or 100 or so, let's say. So we've got a lot of charging, and as you see, so far our efforts have been clustered in some of the more densely populated areas with greater vehicle traffic. That's changing. We're currently involved in the next phases of accelerating our electric vehicle charging deployment. For 2023, we have an EV charging plan that we submitted to Federal Highway Administration, and it outlines the implementation of National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure, or NEVI funds. You can tell I'm an air quality guy. I like acronyms and work very closely with DOT on incorporating those whenever we can. So NEVI funds, just keep that in mind. That is a pot of money that we were able to access $18 million for charging. That's huge. Most of those are directed at priority corridors, and will fund both level 2 and level 3, which are the fast chargers. Recharge Maine, I would like to also point out, this is the state's effort to identify charging infrastructure and basically advertise our network. And we have developed what we believe is a convenient, reliable, and accessible electric vehicle charging network. And through that program, we identify state-funded chargers. And I think it's important to remember that as part of those state-funded programs, we require certain uptimes, including a 97% uptime requirement for those chargers. So the vehicles, the chargers are there. They should be working. If they aren't working, we want to know about it. And then finally, we've got some recent awards and some recent grant applications I would just like to summarize quickly. We have 7 new direct current fast charging sites funded by NEVI. These are in Bangor, Augusta, and Route 1 down east. So yes, you can drive from Ellsworth to Machias, or will be able to very soon, along with 5 new direct current fast charger sites funded by the Maine Job Recovery Program, MJRP. Again, a great acronym. So available in total, we're looking at $8 million from MJRP. We're looking at $18 million from the NEVI program. And then finally, there's the Federal Charging and Fuel Infrastructure Program, and we have applied for $15 million through that program. The last slide, I think I pointed out, we're up to about 440 chargers. Implementation and award of these grants would more than double that. So we would be looking at well over 1,000 chargers. So can you get from Kittery to Fort Kent? Yes. Will chargers be available on just about all of the major routes? The answer is yes. And on top of that, we're also seeing installation of chargers at a number of private sites. With that, I'll turn it over to Joyce.
Thank you, Jeff. Fun fact, my first professional job, I worked with Jeff back in the day at DEP, and we were very young then. Not so much now, but okay. All right, okay. I'm hoping that's, yay. So readying the workforce to repair and service EVs. There's several programs going on. This is one of the things that came up in the last round of the Climate Council planning. People were very concerned about who they could get to fix their cars. So some community colleges have stepped up, and then the governor's energy office is also applying for a grant to support the EV charging and EV workforce deployment. And we have been working with a number of folks in terms of installing these, because you need to have an apprenticeship program and be a licensed electrician to be able to install these. So medium heavy duty electrification, I think there's some things that have happened that's really exciting. If you think about transit, it also comes under the category of less vehicle miles traveled. At the Department of Transportation, we paid for an electrification of the fleet study, and it really is what I would call a medium level look, where we try to say, okay, what do we have to do to help these agencies be able to, what are the next steps to go to electric? And out of that, a number of transit agencies, 8 plans are specifically completed, and it has things like, what kind of power do I need? Where does the power have to come in? How big does my building need to be? What routes are the best to electrify right off the bat? And 4 more are looking at it. We also we're lucky enough the community connector in the Bangor area was awarded funding to work on their facility, because that was one of the things the plan said they needed to do, is have some changes made to their facilities. And we also did really well with the school bus program. Thanks to GoPIF's hard work, we were awarded 34 electric buses through EPA's Clean School Bus program, and I think they didn't they just announce yesterday there's another round coming. I was telling Jess, my dog ran away Sunday, so I had to go up to the Winthrop High School looking for him, and all of their buses were being charged. It was pretty cool, actually. I did find my dog, yes. So transit really is also under the reducing vehicle miles traveled. And I would say that we are also working on, with our transit providers, on how do we get people to ride? What do you do to get people to want to ride a bus and to participate? So I would want to focus a little bit on active transportation, because, you know, I've been chief engineer for 9 years, and if I've learned anything, people won't walk or bike if they don't feel safe unless they absolutely have to. And so we have an obligation. I like to say everyone deserves to be able to walk and bike and not fear of dying. So it would be, you know, part of what we're trying to do is to improve safety, to encourage people, especially with e-bikes, really open up the door for a lot of people. So we've just done the very first time in the state our active transportation plan, where we're prioritizing areas. We also are promoting some active transportation through some different initiatives. We have started a village program where we're trying to help villages, you know, like I grew up on Route 2 in Vermont, and my main street was Route 2, and I biked to school every day, and I had to cross Route 2. How do we get people to be able to reclaim their villages so they can be part of their village and they want to bike and walk? We've come up with a gateway treatment program for communities that, we're not going to go spend $10, $20 million on a village program, but they just want signs that say, hey, your speed is da-da-da when you're coming into town. Or maybe we use paint in a way that we narrow up the lanes and we get people to recognize, hey, you just came into a 25 mile per hour zone, slow down. And, getting people's attention and what are the really inexpensive things we can do today to start working with communities to feel safer. So we're working on that. Our complete streets policy will be updated and out this spring. We also have just had a 9-month effort. I'm skipping around a little bit. A 9-month effort in how are we going to set speeds in the future? Because, it's pretty clear that at 25 miles per hour, if you do get hit by a car, your ability to survive, that's a heck of a lot better than at 35 or 45. And, we get asked to lower speeds all the time at the Department of Transportation, and we say just changing this speed sign doesn't do anything. So how do we provide context? How do we work with communities to get speeds lower? And so we are going to go to, breaking news, I haven't said this publicly, but we are going to a context-based speed setting program. And so we will not be using the 85th percentile, if anyone knows that. Thank you. It's taken a lot of work. We haven't really unveiled it, so you're the first to hear it, but we're working on that. We will let people see it. It's just right now I still have to clean up the report a little bit. But we're working hard at trying to get people to do voluntary speed compliance. So that's a big, huge initiative for the department to help support this less vehicle miles traveled. There's some great options right now in terms of commuting options. Go Maine. Did anyone use Go Maine to come here today? What? Okay, we need to work on that, everyone, all right? So it's a great opportunity to carpool and to log your miles, and lots of people meet new friends when they come to meetings like this. And we also were fortunate enough to get some of the Maine Jobs Recovery Program funds for a workforce pilot to be able to have a rural transit pilot. We've had several companies apply. It's been really interesting because they're not just looking at vans to get people to work. They're looking at buying their employees e-bikes so that they can come from a bus to a bike and get to that last mile. So we left that program deliberately way open-ended so that people could really be creative. We and Department of Labor are working on an e-bike pilot where we'll buy 10 bikes, and it hasn't been finalized yet, but our goal is to buy 10 bikes, give them to people who are perhaps transitioning from recovery to work. They work so many hours, they get the bike. We get them the equipment. We're modeling this after programs Vermont and Colorado have done, and they are finding huge success rates. 90% of the people keep their jobs. So we're going to try that as part of our equity work. So we also we have the department has been a major player in the bike share in Portland. We haven't advertised that, but we are helping get that going. And then I tried to get it for today, but I couldn't get it. But we bought e-bikes, or I should say we're leasing e-bikes, and we have a contract with Bicycle Coalition of Maine. I don't know if Jean is here today, but you can go online on BCM and register for an event, if you have a town event or you have something, and they'll come with the bikes and they will come with people to help you ride a bike. And really our goal is to help. The e-bikes really are a game changer for people maybe who are not as physical, maybe who are uncomfortable. I can tell you, this is a true story. Last week, we brought the bikes to an employee recognition day in southern Maine. All my plow truck drivers are there. Those things were a huge hit. People who had not ridden a bike in 40 years, 50 years, were on the bike racing each other, and the crews were racing each other. I mean, they were very skeptical. I'm going to tell you, they all were kind of walking by, but big, burly, bearded guys, to be honest, were all riding around. They had a blast. So I think that, what we're trying to do is take some of those recommendations we had in the Maine Won't Wait and try to act on them and start to implement some pilot projects. Also, one of our our strategic recommendations was more broadband. Since the last climate plan, the Maine Connectivity Authority has been formed, and they are going to town. They've gotten a lot of money. They've won some grants, and they're really actively trying to implement broadband, high-speed broadband all over the state. And so they're very active. I know because I work with them a lot. DOT is trying to help them be able to get to an implementation plan. So challenges and opportunities. We need to continue to adopt EVs. We need to figure out the equity piece of this so that we can help folks, low and moderate income Mainers, get into an EV if they want to. It was something that we looked at during the last climate plan, but we didn't really come up with any solutions or recommendations, and I think that's something we have to look a little harder at. We've just started to really, we had a stakeholder group on medium and heavy duty vehicles that Jeff and I were part of. And we learned together. I would say we learned together for about a year what the challenges are. And I think, trying to do a little bit more. We are going to do a roadmap for medium heavy duty vehicles. The charging is different for them in terms of where they want to charge potentially compared to light duty vehicles. We need to keep looking at what we can do to reduce vehicle miles traveled. This is a tough one. Really, we are back to pre-pandemic numbers in terms of vehicle miles traveled. Maybe we waver like a 1.5% below, but we're not really making the progress there, and we need to focus on it. I think we've had such great success with the EV charging. It allows us now in this next round to focus a little bit more on vehicle miles traveled. We also, in the last round, didn't really do much with marine and aviation alternative fuels, and so we plan to do some work on that with the upcoming group. So I didn't get my 2-minute sign, did I?
Oh, you did.
Oh, I did? Oh, sorry.
It's okay. All right, thank you, Joyce.
I talked fast.
You did good. You did good. All right, it's all good. I may give people the hook a little bit sooner next time, but thank you both. That was really interesting. So let's take 60 seconds, and if you click on that same URL with your phone, or just go back to it in your browser and update, Cam should have advanced it. It's going to ask you, what should the Transportation Working Group absolutely not forget as it starts this process? Right? It's just, we'll take 60 seconds in silence. If you're having a hard time with your phone, switch to paper.
Some of us take these times seriously. Not like the Department of Transportation.
Yeah, that's right. All right, we'll give people a second just to finish so they're not focused on their phone while you're talking. Okay, great. So, as you can see, if any of you were involved last time around in this, you will see some very familiar faces here on the stage. You've got Kathleen Mail from the Maine Conservation Voters, and Michael Stoddard, who runs Maine Efficiency Maine Trust, excuse me. And they are co-chairs. I will turn it over to you. Here's your clicker. And pay attention to Sarah Kern, who's got that little 2-minute warning.
Why? Nobody else did. Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you, David. Great to see everybody today. The Buildings, Infrastructure, and Housing Working Group focuses on the opportunities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by things you can do in the buildings, whether it's commercial building, industrial, manufacturing building, or residential. I love that we put this slide up first. This is an example of an affordable housing building that was put up, 5 or 6 years ago maybe, in downtown Portland. It just by dumb luck happens to be the case that the architect is here, Jesse Thompson. Raise your hand, Jesse. One thing I love about it's always best to do it right the first time. It's a lot more affordable to do things right the first time. The walls on this building are like this thick. and filled with insulation. I might be taking a little artistic license there. But it's incredibly efficient, and they sealed every single nook and cranny. So the air infiltration is the smallest number you'll ever see in a newly built building. The result of which is, Jesse said at the time he estimated that the tenants would be able to heat their apartments for between $10 and $20 a month. So that's what you can do if you do it right the first time. Fortunat Muller's here from Revision Energy, and they put solar on the roof. So this is a building that is really doing right by Maine's low-income folks who are living in affordable housing. I don't know what I'm pointing at. We've been working diligently since the production of the last of the climate action plan, the Maine Won't Wait, back in 2020. And one of the things that we were really focusing on, obviously, was transitioning our heating and cooling systems in Maine to heat pumps. A goal had been set in legislation of adding 100,000 new heat pumps by 2025, and we were thrilled to be able to announce this past summer at the end of June, actually we announced it in July, that we had met that goal and blown past it 2 years ahead of schedule. So I'm super proud of the team at Efficiency Maine. I think we accounted for 101,000 of those, and there were another 3,000. So we actually got to 104,000 by June 30th. So there was thank you. There was a really nice event at the Kennebec Valley Community College with the governor and Dan Burgess at the Governor's Energy Office. KVCC, the community college president is here, and senior climate advisor to the White House, who you see there in the foreground. So it was a really nice story that we were able to get a little extra press on. And the community colleges are playing an important role in training up more and more workforce to be able to do this well and do good quality installations. By far, the most powerful marketing tool we have is word of mouth. When you start installing new technology and it doesn't work well, that can play against you quickly, and that can really slow down your progress. But we've been fortunate to have good quality installers and good resulting installations, and so customers are happy, and when customers are happy, they tell their friends, and that's how you make this kind of thing work. We have a lot more to go. There was a new goal established of adding 175,000 more heat pumps in the state. This, by the way, was not arrived at randomly or arbitrarily. This is what we estimate is the trajectory we need to be on in order to hit the targets that were established in Maine Won't Wait a couple of years ago. So we need to get to 115,000 whole homes that are heated exclusively by heat pumps, and another 130,000 that are using some form of heat pumps. So when we backed out, or when we reversed from that destination to where we would be by the end of 2026, start of 2027, we need to add about 175,000 more. So we got to giddy up. This is a graphic representation of that progress that we've made. The new heat pumps you see on the left graph, I want to point out that those bars are not exactly, I mean, they're in sequence, but there's a 4-year gap there from 2023 to 2027. So that's the goal we've got to get to. We have a few years to do it, and we're very fortunate that we have some policies in Maine that are extremely supportive of us being able to fund that, together with some new funding that we're going to talk about from the federal government that is also going to help us get that done. I'm feeling optimistic about that. We also have work to do to meet a goal that we set in the Climate Action Plan for low-income homeowners and tenants. And we've got 7,800 in place cumulatively, but our goal is 15,000. And this is a place in particular where the new federal funding is going to really help us get over the top. So that's what we do with our heating systems, which is, as you know, 60% of homes in Maine use heating oil, and another 10% or so use propane and kerosene. These are the big sources of our greenhouse gas emissions from the building sector. So to be able to switch those heating systems off of that dirty fuel onto something that's clean and efficient is a huge part of what we have to do for our climate action plan. The other part, though, is the building envelope, the shell of the building, the walls and the ceilings and the attics and the basements. So weatherizing those homes is another goal that was in the Climate Action Plan. We have a goal of getting, I think the goal initially was to double the pace. This happened right in the middle of the pandemic, which made things a little tricky. But we have seen great, steady progress. We have doubled the pace of weatherizations, and now we just need to keep moving along so we hit that 17,500 by mid-decade, and then the ultimate goal for 2030 was 35,000. I think we'll get there. Homes weatherized for low income. Here again, we had a goal of getting to 1,000 a year, and as you can see, last year we got just about there. So again, this is a place where the arrival of some federal funding from the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, and coming soon, the Inflation Reduction Act, all those funds going to climate activity are going to make this possible. Speaking of the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, this was over about $1 billion in total that came to Maine, and a chunk of it, the governor's team tried to ask to allocate to energy efficiency and clean energy work going on in buildings. $50 million was allocated to Efficiency Maine to put in heat pumps in schools, municipalities, congregate housing, and hospitality, which we're about a quarter of the way through that funding right now. Another half of that was for weatherization in low and moderate income buildings. So you can see we're continually trying to fund the work that needs to be done to hit those weatherization targets and those heat pump targets. Another $31 million was allocated to Maine housing through the bipartisan infrastructure law to do more weatherization in low-income homes. And then I mentioned previously that we're looking forward to getting about $71 million, probably not by the end of this calendar, but early next calendar year, from the Inflation Reduction Act's rebate programs, which will be largely used to promote heat pumps. So we're lucky that we have policies and funding and policymakers that are supporting our goals, and so far, so good.
Thank you, thank you. All right. Well, that theme of funding and policies and policymakers who are prioritizing the right things continues here. One of the things that's really powerful about the way that we have approached this work together is the way that we're centering equity and people. And so that really great story about that affordable housing project that we started this presentation with, we're making sure that's not the exception, that's the norm. So you see here that starting now, all projects that are for affordable housing must be energy efficient, must be electrified heating, and must be EV and PV ready, and we have great resources to make those things happen. When it comes to new buildings, we want to make sure that we are building right the first time, and we have new building codes in place to make sure that that is the case. Maine Housing has adopted the most recent energy building codes for all new construction and is required now to achieve Passive House standard equivalency. This is something that the Buildings Working Group spent quite a bit of time talking about last time, and we're really excited to see that that recommendation is already making a difference. We are also thinking about schools for all of the reasons that we talked about this morning. We heard from young people who are living this climate crisis in a different way than us old folks are. And Joyce mentioned the incredible success of the EV school bus program. There will now be a Green Schools Director to help add that capacity directly to the Department of Education to continue EV school buses and energy efficiency upgrades and all sorts of other things that are happening in schools, including looping in the climate education so that students are learning about those improvements as they are happening. We do have a few things left on our list. And one of those is, as Michael said, as soon as we blew past that heat pump target, we set a new one. So you'll see the first item on this list is continue progress in weatherization and heat pumps, because we're just going to keep setting the bar higher and higher every time we pass it. We're going to advance energy building codes. We have adopted those codes. There is a gap between putting those codes in practice and adopting them. So our next step is to really make sure that there is the support and for training for compliance and enforcement of those building energy codes. Continue to focus on affordable housing and schools and public buildings. This is our opportunity to lead by example and to make a really important difference where it matters most for people. We have some new mechanisms to deliver funding, as well as a huge amount of federal funding that is coming into the state. So we're going to be thinking about what the financing options look like going forward. And then this last item is one that we're going to be working really closely with our friends on the Energy Working Group, because there is, of course, this opportunity to not just reduce the amount of energy that we're using, but to manage our use of that energy to maximize the grid's efficiency. I think this is the part where David asks you which of these things we should be focusing on, but I'm going to let him do that.
Okay. Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks, Michael. All right. So thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Michael. Fantastic. Let's do that same thing. If we can advance the slide. Maybe that's up to me, actually. Oops, now I'm going too crazy on you. Let's back it up. Take a moment. We'll do this to the 30-second version. What should they not forget as Kathleen and Michael co-chair this work going forward? Feel free to write it on a piece of paper or in your phone. Cam should have advanced it to the next piece. Let's just take 30 seconds. While they're doing that, I'll invite Dan Burgess and Ken to come up so we are efficient with our use of time here. Okay. Great. And so Kathleen did a nice segue to this group, right? Because the groups are going to have to work together, right? And so on the stage here, if you don't know, Dan Burgess, who's director of the Governor's Energy Office, is here. And Ken Colburn, who's an energy expert and also co-chair last time around of this very same committee. So it's wonderful to have you both back as co-chairs. Let me turn the mic over to you. And thanks for being here. Big, this one at the top. Oops, did I jump it? I keep. Yeah,
Hi, I'm Ken Colburn. I'll let Dan run the slides, and I want to welcome all of the members of the Energy Working Group that are here, and those of you who are dialing in. Thanks for your insistence as we go forward into Chapter 2. Dan will provide the substance of what has been going on in the state. I'm just here to bookend for him and do the color commentary. But I'm sure you're all aware that our modern quality of life hinges on the use of energy. And that has worked pretty well for industrialized countries, except for the external costs that we've asked Mother Nature to pick up the tab for. That tab is now coming due, as the STS, Science and Technology Subcommittee, so clearly pointed out this morning. So I feel particularly blessed to be in a state that is actually working on that instead of just talking about it. And Dan will cover those points and then the ways we're working on it, and then I'll wrap up for us. Thanks, Dan. Big one.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ken. Again, I'm Dan Burgess, Director of the Governor's Energy Office. Pleasure to be here with you all. And Ken, I want to note Caroline Cullen from our team is a key member of the staff working, keeping us all organized and prepared. I've been told to give the quick version of this. You've seen this slide before about Maine's climate targets. We've added some of our clean energy targets here, which I think want to highlight, particularly the 80% renewable energy by 2030, and now the Governor's directive to us to establish a 100% clean electricity by 2040. And so those go part and parcel with the presentations before, looking at our climate and clean energy goals. So what have we done? So over the last 4 to 5 years, the state has, and even since the Climate Action Plan was delivered, the state has taken some really significant steps in our energy policy arena towards meeting these requirements. Again, an 80% renewable energy requirement by 2030, which supports a wide variety of technologies, targeted procurements for a number of different technologies, a number of different instances. And just in this last legislative session has passed a really significant offshore wind procurement legislation, working with many folks in this room for 3,000 megawatts from the Gulf of Maine by 2040. So this is the first time in the state's history that we have had an offshore wind specific procurement, and this is a big part of that. Our office will be responsible for working with others in the Public Utilities Commission for that, putting that procurement forward. The same can be said for energy storage. A lot of that is happening in a few different arenas, and Efficiency Maine Trust has programs, but we are now directed with coming up with a new procurement for energy storage. We have new solar distributed generation goals and procurements targeted for contaminated lands. And then again, we are working with our partners in both the other working groups on electrification strategies. I just want to point out that the transition is not happening in a vacuum. We share a grid with the other New England states. This chart here shows that there are a number of different parts to a RPS requirement or renewable requirement. One of them is to add new resources. And so these charts show the mandates in our states across the region for adding new renewable resources. And so you can see we are within that pack. We have Rhode Island, Vermont, and others also actively working on this with us. We are, again, to put these in chart form, we're seeing just a really significant growth in both large scale and distributed solar. That's the chart on the left, where we went from before the governor came into office and before the Climate Action Plan existed, under 100 megawatts of solar. Today, this chart, we're going to have some new numbers soon. We're over 800 megawatts of solar. And then again, we are on target to reach our RPS goal, or renewable goal of 80% by 2030. At the same time, we need to have the workforce to build that. You heard Commissioner Johnson's presentation. We are just about halfway, and we'll have some new announcements on that analysis of where we are for the number of clean energy jobs in the state, the 30,000 by 2030 goal. We did see a little bit of a dip during the pandemic, unsurprisingly, but we are back above pre-pandemic levels. And the chart on the right shows that energy efficiency is a large portion of that, but we're also seeing new opportunities for sector growth and are excited about investments that our office, through the Clean Energy Partnership, Department of Labor, GoPIF, and others are making to advance the workforce. One other piece we want to make sure not to leave out, which was mentioned earlier, is a focus on industrial energy efficiency. There's been an industrial task force that was created and has met or has been formed and has met a few times to look at opportunities in the industrial sector. And then particularly one of the recommendations from the Climate Council was to move forward with a highly efficient combined heat and power procurement. That procurement was run by the Commission, did not result in successful projects. However, they were just directed to make some tweaks and rerun that. And so we're excited to see the Commission come out with the new CHP procurement. Challenges and opportunities. Ken, do you want to take this? Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Dan's just given you several of the things I mentioned that we're actually working on as opposed to just talking about. Great work by the state on that. Dan's office in particular. So a lot of that federal money is coming right to him to try to figure out what to do with. Fortunately, he has great help. But over the last several minutes, Dan's given you several of the things that we are doing, but there's also plenty of challenges and opportunities that await us. Several of those are listed here. But for example, as we electrify more and more of our economy, we'll also have to change the way we manage our energy use. For example, instead of continually adding expensive technologies on the grid, we can change the way we manage our energy demand instead, so that we don't have to make those investments just to address peaks. Think of a multi-lane highway and backing up at the toll booths. If we built our highways the same way as we built our electric grid, we would never have any delays on highways. Imagine how many lanes that would be. Imagine how many miles, how much land use that would be. Imagine how costly that would be. Well, it's time to start changing our energy system so we have similar demand management the way we are now incorporating into our highway system. Thank you, Joyce. There is the comprehensive energy planning that's underway. Dan just touched on it amidst the achievements, but actually to ensure that there's future achievements to buttress those. Those changes, that planning and its implementation will help us identify policies whereby we will ensure that Maine's household and businesses have access to clean, affordable, reliable, and adequate energy. And each of those is far more than an adjective, it's an obligation. Are we meeting our emission reduction goals? Is it clean enough? Is it affordable enough energy that our citizens can actually still live with it and enjoy that quality of life that energy use allows? Is it reliable? Is it always there? And is it adequate? Is there enough of it for everything we're going to be asking electricity to do in the future? But not just electricity, we need cleaner distributed fuels as well. And so the work group will be working on that. And all of that, of course, over the coming decades to ensure that historically disadvantaged communities and our low-income citizens also take part fully in the clean energy transition. So, thanks very much.
Great. All right. So, you know what I'm going to say. That nice little QR code, it gives you a chance to give Dan and Ken some input about what they should not be forgetting as they launch into this new round of work. Okay. I'll give folks just a moment to do that. And I'll also ask Amanda Beal if you're here. No? Tom's going to be here. Tom Abello's here as co-chair of the Natural and Working Lands Working Group. And we'll get going in just one sec. You can stay standing. I'm just going to say one word and then turn it. Okay. Great. Phones down. Super. Tom Abello's here. He is Legislative Director at the Office of the Governor and co-chair of the Natural and Working Lands Working Group. So, Tom, over to you.
Thank you.
Green button.
Thanks, David. Hi, everybody. My co-chair, Amanda Beal, commissioner of DACF, is out sick, so you get just me, which is unfortunate. But we're excited to have the Natural Working Lands Committee back together. We've been doing a lot of work over the last couple years. We've been meeting both as a large group, but also been doing work in advisory group level and also with an executive order and task force. And I'll get into some of the highlights that have kind of been produced out of that work. I'd also say that a focus of our group has always been around, yes, storing more carbon, providing incentives for increased carbon sequestration, but making sure that we, as part of that, are thinking about climate-friendly jobs, the economy on both the agriculture sector, but also the forestry sector, and for natural lands. So target one, conserve 30% of Maine's natural working lands by 2030. This graph here shows that we've made a very, very minor progress from 2020 to 2022, but sort of well on our way to 30% by 2030. We're in line with other states in New England, our partner states. I think primarily that 22% is made up of rather large working forest conservation easements in the northern part of the state. And so as we get back into this target and begin to get into this recommendation more, we're going to look for what are the gaps? What have we missed over time? For example, we have about 5% of our working farmland protected, so that will likely be an area that we'll want to dig into at some level. And as part of that, We want to make sure that we're looking at our natural lands as well, ecological reserves. That often comes up at the legislature, but this working group will dig into that a little bit too. So as part of that, we'll have to maximize our conservation funding opportunities. We have an historic investment of about $40 million in the Land for Maine's Future program from a couple years ago. That we've allocated just under $30 million of that in several rounds of funding from the LMF board. None of those projects have closed yet, so the acreage figure still needs to come forward. But there's one more round for the LMF board, and then this group will be looking at what are the additional steps we should take for new funding for LMF or new funding for state conservation dollars. We'll also be looking at making sure that the state and partners are participating in as many federal funding opportunities as possible, either through programs like the Land and Water Conservation Fund, the Forest Legacy Program, farmland protection programs. So make sure that they're well utilized across the state and we're not leaving anything on the table. And much of the work that the state is doing really isn't possible without the really strong collaborations with land conservation groups, municipalities, land trusts, and many, many others. And so we'll continue to build on those and incentivize those where possible. The next target is around increasing food consumed in Maine from state food producers to 30%. There's some disagreement or some debate yet about where we currently are toward this goal. And so that's, I would think, job one is to get a better sense of where we are and how we move forward. But we'll be tackling this in a number of ways. Number one is around investments. And so we have some examples of the recent work that we've been doing on investments. Those include about $20 million of federal money that was used for ag processing grants and for food producers to increase what they do and how they can make more Maine products available for Maine consumers. There's also new USDA funding to enhance food system resilience, market access, and value-added opportunities for farms and food businesses. And then finally, we have a new state infrastructure food program that was just passed in this last legislative session. It was modestly funded at about $500,000 one time, but we'll be looking to continue to build on that and make sure that we are fully funding those opportunities. Yes. And then increasing access to the emergency food system. Just a couple of recent examples. Again, from USDA, they provided some funding. I think it was around $5 million to enable Maine to purchase food from Maine producers for free distribution to underserved communities. And then there's $1 million per year that goes from the Department of Ag, Conservation, and Forestry to the Good Shepherd Food Bank for these kind of programs, and we'll continue to sort of figure out if there are other ways to incentivize and increase some of that work. And then finally, institutional sourcing. University of Maine in fiscal year 22, they averaged around 26% local procurement, which is a really good number, really strong number. We want to figure out how we can increase that and get others to participate as well. And then one final example is the Maine prison system. The local procurement is around 20%. And then the final target that we will engage in is around increased carbon sequestration of our natural working lands. A lot of the work that's been done so far has been through the Forest Carbon Task Force, which was established by executive order from the governor. It really focused on small to medium landowners, so 10 acres to 10,000 acres, and making sure that we have, or looking at ways that we can incentivize more carbon sequestration-friendly forestry and other actions for those folks. And so digging into some of that, one of the outcomes there, I know I'm running up against time here, is we added capacity with the Maine Forest Service for additional district foresters and to hire a new forest carbon specialist, which I believe that individual comes on in the next week or so. But that'll really provide that technical assistance, education, outreach to get people that are that have forest land more opportunities, more understanding, education about how to cut wood in a climate-friendly way. And then 3 others. We have a healthy soils program that was established by the legislature a couple years ago, initially funded at $1.5 million and then $500,000 ongoing. That provides technical assistance and incentives for doing a whole range of climate-friendly agricultural practices. We engaged in a soil carbon study along with our partners, the state partners, DACF, IFNW, and then Maine, looking at kind of a baseline of where we are in the state in terms of soil carbon and ways that we might increase it through a whole range of activities. And then finally, investing in carbon-friendly forest practices and products through things like cross-laminated timber, other mass timber products, wood insulation, et cetera. So challenges and opportunities ahead. Our working group will focus on these 3 issues here to continue progress toward the conservation goal, increase in-state consumption of Maine-produced food, and then increase carbon sequestration on our natural and working lands.
Super. Excellent. Thanks, Tom. Okay, great. Again, an opportunity. Hop on your phones quickly or that link if you're online with us. Provide some input about what the natural and working lands folks absolutely need to deal with. While you're doing that, I'm inviting your Coastal Marine Working Group co-chairs to come on up. And come on up. So let me just pause for a second, let you provide some feedback, and then I'll introduce Carl and Kurt. That's mine. Yeah. Okay. Let's give him just a second to answer, and then we'll jump in. Okay. So the folks you see up here, the particularly tall one is Carl Wilson from Maine DMR. I love being in person with folks. It reminds me of people's relative height. So Carl's here from Maine DMR, Department of Marine Resources, and Kurt Brown from Ready Seafood agreed to co-chair. Thank you. So you're both here. I'll let you talk through what your working group will be looking at coming up. So whoever goes first.
Great. Okay, both Kurt and I have an alarmingly deep connection with lobsters. So we're going to treat the next 8 minutes kind of like a string of traps coming aboard. Traps going to come up, we're going to pick them, we're going to change slides, and the next trap's going to come right up right after us. So first of all, thank you for the working group members that are here today. We're really looking forward to working with you. And a tip of the cap to our past leaders with Kathleen Layden, who's in the back, and Heather Leslie, who is not here today, but did just an extraordinary amount of work in the last iteration of this working group. So I think both Kurt and I want to kind of look at today with a little look to the past, a look at the present, and a look at maybe a little bit look forward to where we are going. And it's an exciting time. So where is the big green button? Okay, we find ourselves, as everyone knows, in an extraordinary time where federal funds have come in. And as we learned earlier today, when you build a resilient culvert, you can also armor a town and a community and homes, but you can also armor an ecosystem. And so we just wanted to highlight that recent investments over $35 million for culvert improvements in the state of Maine goes directly to increasing the resilience of our communities, but also the resilience of our species, such as anadromous species and sea-run species. Okay, next trap. Fundamental to all of our conversations is data. directly coming out of a lot of the working groups, it wasn't just the Marine Working Group, was the call for information and an information clearinghouse. University of Maine has stepped up with the creation of MIXI, the Maine's Climate Science Information Exchange. This is really intended to be a clearinghouse of information that all of our working groups can use. And so thank you, the University of Maine, for doing this and for those that are involved with that. We are also lucky here to have here Kurt, who's not only a lobsterman, a lobster scientist, and a generally great guy, but most recently he is the modern equivalent of Johnny Appleseed, where he is going around the country talking about the good things about the lobster fishery. So take it away, Captain Kurt.
Thank you, Carl. Much appreciated. The string of traps analogy is very fitting. We're required to have weak links in all of our inlines at this point in time, and it's kind of how I see my role here as co-chair with Carl. You are the weakest link. So anyways, investing in Maine's working waterfront and fisheries, that was one of the big things to come out of the last round. Ready Seafood has proved positive that this investment made a big difference. $16 million in federal funds, including $10 million from the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, really made a huge difference. Pre-COVID, our biggest customers, the majority of our customers wanted their product in 10-pound boxes of frozen tails and 2-pound bags of meat, and come February, March of 2020, those customers disappeared overnight, and we had to pivot as a company and as an industry to meet smaller volume retail customers, and those funds really helped us purchase the equipment and the packaging that enabled us to do that and stay strong as a company and as an industry. It's made a big difference, and when you have industry strong, collaborations persist and grow, and collaborations we've been a part of on everything from increasing disease resistance through a collaboration with the University of Maine and Maine's Potatoes by utilizing lobster shells in the soil, which has been a wonderful collaboration. UMaine, DMR, Ready Seafood, and a number of other suppliers along the coast are collaborating on science to improve the sustainability of Maine's lobster fishery and really get a foothold and a better understanding of the earliest life stages of the lobster life cycle. And we're even collaborating with a group from the University of Maryland right now on incorporating the chitin and chitosan from lobster shells into zinc-ion batteries for grid storage. So really wonderful stuff happens when we invest in Maine's working waterfront and fisheries. Green button, big green button. There it is. Works. North Atlantic right whale and lobster. You might have heard about this in the news over the last year or two. So ultimately, lack of data and high uncertainty for the Gulf of Maine and risk assessments led to significant proposed management actions that would impact the lobster and gillnet fisheries. That's an understatement. A year ago, our industry was looking at a cliff. Regulations that were coming down the pipeline would literally have put Maine lobster out of business, and we would have lost Maine and our country's most sustainable and iconic fishery. Fortunately, over the last 12 months, a Herculean effort of DMR, Governor's Office, our entire federal delegation, we were able to work an amendment into the omnibus spending bill this past December. Any of the delegation staff that is here today certainly had a December to remember this past December. For them, probably a December to forget, given the amount of work that had to go into that. And then a judge's ruling this past June overturned a previous decision that put, like I said, our industry at risk. And a lot of that came from a lack of data. And this is just from the court decision here this past June. The court noted that the lack of data led National Marine Fisheries Service to conclude the lobster and Jonah crab federal fisheries kill 46 whale deaths per decade, a, quote, staggering departure from the 2 documented deaths known to have originated in all U.S. fisheries over a period of 9 years. And neither of those 2 were from Maine. So a lack of data almost led to a collapse of our fishery. We have the unique opportunity from both the amendment and that judge's ruling and federal funds that just came through a week or 2 ago to restructure the way we collect data. It is so important, and a lack of uncertainty allows us to make decisions based on information. And this isn't just data that helps lobsters and whales We're talking about ecosystem data that helps inform everything that we are talking about today. Let's see. Opportunities for sequestering carbon. This is not my area of expertise by any means, but I am really excited to work with members of our working group on this front. We have a great group with a lot of very, very intelligent folks, and I see a lot of positives on the horizons. So for us, challenges and opportunities. I know we're running out of time here. Support science and monitoring, and not just short-term monitoring. I think Carl and I both agree that a really important opportunity that we have, especially with the funding coming down the pipeline, is setting up long-term monitoring programs that can inform decisions that we make about climate here in Maine. Susie's still here. Mentioned Jordan Basin in the Northeast Channel earlier today and the changes that we've seen in temperatures there. If you go on Nirakus's Climate Solutions website right now, neither of those buoys have had any data come through all year long. That's unacceptable at this time. I mean, we need that data year in and year out so that we can make those informed decisions. Incorporate climate adaptation into state and marine policies, and support continued investments to support adaptation and resilience in the marine economy and infrastructure, and then also explore opportunities to encourage blue carbon sequestration and marine co-benefits. So I hope we didn't run over by too much, but I appreciate the time today, everybody, and we're really excited to get to work. So thank you very much.
Great. Well done. Okay. Same routine, folks. If there's particular things for Kurt and Carl that they should not be forgetting as they launch forward into this very interesting set of conversations, pop them into your phone right now. There's also physical pieces of paper on the tables if you're tired of your phone. We'll give it just a moment here. Okay. I know we've got folks here at the front table. I'll just invite you to come on up. Rebecca Boulos, Judy East, and Sam Roy. Sam is the one I haven't met yet. Nice to meet you, Sam. Come on up, and I'll introduce you in just a sec. Just give folks a moment to write some thoughts down if they have some for the Marine Coastal Group. Yeah. Oh, that's mine. Thank you. Okay, so here on the stage, you have Judy East, who you'll remember from last time around. New job, amazing person, now at the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. Fantastic. You've got Rebecca Boulos, also last time, helped co-chair this committee, this working group from the Maine Public Health Association. Fantastic. And we've got Sam Roy, Maine Emergency Management Agency. Thanks, Sam, for stepping up and being willing to do this as well. So a great team. We used to call this group the super group or something, right? Because they had like 3 things we mashed into one. I think we've learned from last time, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say. So I don't know who's going first in the presentation, but I'll invite you to come on up. Thanks, Sam.
Super group, huh? Wow. All right, exciting. So, yeah, as David mentioned, I'm Sam Roy. I'm the Natural Hazards Planner with the Maine Emergency Management Agency. And Judy East, of course, is a co-chair as well, Director of the Bureau of Resource Information and Land Use Planning, DACF. And Becca Boulos, Executive Director of the Maine Public Health Association. So we're going to be providing some highlights in progress and future directions for the Community Resilience, Public Health, and Emergency Management Working Group. And you may remember Ann Fuchs, who was the previous emergency management co-chair. I've taken over for her. She sends her regards, says hello. But there has been a recent need to shift her leadership over to the substantial number of presidential disaster declarations that Maine has experienced in the last 8 or so months. Speaking of, so we've actually, as a state, we've received 4 different disaster declarations since December. So that's actually 4 disaster declaration level events within 7 months of each other. That's really unprecedented for the state of Maine, where typically we might see something on the order of 1 per year or less than that. So it's fairly unprecedented. And the impacts that we've seen in J, that's actually reflected in a lot of different communities. We focus on J. That was probably well, by dollar amount, that's definitely the largest event that we've experienced this year. And I don't need to spend too much time on that because our scientific and technical committee already went into great detail, as well as our internationally acclaimed Envirothon team as well. So I wanted to note that of the 4, in total, there's been about $15 million worth of public damages to public facilities from those events alone. And we're still learning about the full scope of damages from those 4 different events. And I just wanted to note also that these recent impacts experienced in Jay and other towns, they're really evidence that these damaging events, they're not just coastal. They're definitely a statewide issue. It's happening now, and every community is potentially vulnerable. But so much for the doom and gloom. Let's talk about some good things, how we're building some support. So our working group has implemented a number of strategies in response to these growing concerns about climate change, fueling these extreme and unpredictable incidents. These are commitments to better understand climate risk and to build resilience. And some of these strategies include some statutory and rule changes in multiple agencies, which have incorporated sea level rise and climate resilience into rulemaking. So some of these include changes to the Natural Resources Protection Act, statutes for land use districts and standards, and the Growth Management Law. Also, Maine DOT is developing a high-resolution, dynamic, and probabilistic model of flood risk from storm events and projected sea level rise. They're working in coordination with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, who's developing the model for us. It's based on new LIDAR data that's coming from NOAA, and we should have some preliminary results expected within summer of 2024, with final model results in 2025. Also, the state is expecting to receive $1 million in FEMA mitigation grant funding to conduct a vulnerability assessment of state assets, building off of the recently completed State Hazard Mitigation Plan, which was recently formally approved by the federal government, which we're very excited about, by the way. Okay, so moving on, through the Community Resilience Partnership, the state has been able to fund 147 different communities, which you also have heard, and you've seen this map in the previous presentation. We're just trying to burn that into your memory of the progress that's been made here. Of these, 129 communities are fully enrolled. Those are noted in blue on the map. And the green ones are actually 45 different communities that are working on enrollment with service providers. There's been a lot of progress made in that direction. And I wanted to note that these partnerships focus on socially vulnerable communities distributed across the entire state. So you see there's a pretty decent distribution across all of the state of Maine for these efforts. So the state has also successfully implemented the Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund, having invested approximately $20 million to 12 different communities, again indicated on the map, to protect vital infrastructure. An additional $7 million investment is anticipated for culverts that are vulnerable to flooding or road stream crossings, if you will, and failure during extreme coastal or inland weather. And that'll be for the 2023-2024 biennial budget. In addition, there's been significant state and federal investments and partner collaborations have been in play to improve resiliency in wastewater and drinking water systems across Maine. So this is kind of a big one that I've actually learned quite a bit from Becca Boulos about recently. Finally, originating from public health community input meetings, the idea for a Maine Climate Corps was endorsed by our working group and included in the Climate Action Plan. It was then a bill introduced by Representative Morgan Riley and is now a funded program under Volunteer Maine. This is a really good example of why public participation is so important. Engaging in this process with your ideas, with community ideas, can lead to new and innovative programming to help the state prepare for and respond to climate change. And you can see here, just from the list of different communities and the different action areas, the 8 different action areas, that there have been really great impacts this program is already having in Maine communities and in preparing our workforce. Okay, on to challenges and opportunities. First, we'd like to maintain our momentum, first of all. We find it will be definitely important to establish new goals and metrics to evaluate and track our adaptation progress. We want to continue to, of course, fund over long-term adaptation, resilience, mitigation projects across the state of Maine. And we're exploring new strategies to prepare for climate risks. We wish to follow themes in psychological resilience in the midst of climate change, integrating resilience planning with emergency management to better prepare the whole community for change, and begin the tough conversations around getting out of harm's way. I also wanted to note also that we are continuing to invest in tools and technical assistance for communities as well, to their benefit. So that's it for our update. Thanks.
One thing from Judy here.
We're also applying for a ton of federal money, and there's really good collaboration across multiple agencies. So more to come.
Super. Okay, great. Well, thanks to all three. Again, 30 seconds to drop in your phone. What does this community resilience group need to really make sure they keep present as they start their work? They've got a pretty wide group of things to work on. We'll give 20 seconds for that, 30 seconds. Okay. Super. And I want to thank everybody who's been joining us online as well. I know it's kind of a long slog to do most of a day online, so thanks everybody who's held on Zoom. You can see Hannah and Melanie. I just did a little combination there. You like that? Came back, and they're going to take a few minutes to close up our conversation here today in the plenary, and then they're going to invite working group members to go find a room and which has been pre-assigned, and talk. But let me turn it over. And so whichever of you would like to finish up, I turn it over to you. Thanks, Hannah.
Helene. That is a new one. We didn't want to admit this, but Melanie and I both almost wore the same outfit today. So that would have made this day really exciting. We actually just want to wrap up the last conversation by thanking our co-chairs. Great job, all of you, and I think it shows the progress we've made over the last several years, the hard work that went into the plan, and all those ideas are being implemented, but also that the work ahead is really important. So again, thank you, and thank you to all the folks who are going to help dig in. We just wanted to note that this is not the full list, but there are items that cross working groups. I will say workforce and economic opportunities probably hits every single working group in some way. The opportunities for our forest products industry, our agricultural sector. Lots of folks will wrestle about how do we make those things happen and which working group talks about them. Hopefully you all do. Waste emissions. The queen of trash, Maine DEP, is in charge of waste. It's an item that was somewhat left out of the last climate plan that we will do both a specific study led by the DEP, but we will engage in a cross-sector working group on the challenges of waste, the emissions, the energy opportunities, but how do we deal with that issue? I will say land use came up in transportation. It's part of buildings. It's part of many of the other groups that delve into community challenges. So land use planning, how do we help communities with land use challenges, will be a cross-sector effort that we will probably likely convene a bit of an ad hoc group across working groups to work on. Lastly, issues of education of the public, engagement of young people. Again, a cross-sector issue that came together in our last plan, but we will look to some of our youth members, but also look to lots of folks in the other working groups to think about how do we best accomplish accomplish our goals on the topic of education. So this is not a full list, but there are a lot of issues that don't just live within one working group. So I was just we're skipping questions. You're gonna just talk to each other for the next 9 months, and you're gonna have a chance to do that now. So I will say we have a survey, I think, on our website that we will remind you. We'll probably send you an email telling you to fill that out as well. But we are meeting again on December 1. That is our annual meeting where we present our progress over the past year. It is where we present all the metrics. You've seen some of them today, but we'll have some new metrics on December 1. We talk about every strategy of the last plan and where we are. So December 1 will be our next meeting together. We have not yet told you where it's going to be. Some of our meetings over the course of the next year and a half may be online, and some of them will be in person. And we always will have a remote participation option as we move forward. I will just say for the Climate Council, it is nice. We weren't able to be together much last time around, so we will try to find times to get together in person, but Jay's coming down from Aroostook County, Amar's in school in Boston, so we're going to try to find times where you can all Zoom in as well. So December 1 is our next meeting. So I'm going to pass it off to Melanie to say a last, go get them. And then we're going to give you the assignments. If you want to go meet and greet with your working group, the list is up here on where you're going next.
Thanks, Anna. I'm just going to express again thanks to all of you, particularly those of you who have been with us all day long, as tends to be the case when we get together. It's been a lot of information, so thank you for your absorptive abilities. And we promise some of our meetings will be even more interactive than this one was. I want to put special thanks out to the staff from GoPIF for putting together all the details for this meeting. In particular, I would note, just in case you wonder whether or not we listen to your feedback, they've worked really hard on reducing waste generated by this meeting. And so you'll notice that you didn't all get paper agendas. They worked really hard with the Civic Center to try to minimize the food waste that was generated at this meeting. So just wanted to put a little note out on some of those kind of little important details that are part of the work that we're all doing. So I hope that you all take the opportunity to meet with the other members of your working groups and to do a little bit more talking and networking before you take off. Also, please return your name tags in the interest of recycling and reuse. We will hang on to those for next time. And thanks to everybody for being here today.